Hello again, my name is Charles Sabo, and I'm bringing to you another webinar on the book that I've written, Joel, Zephaniah, and Zechariah, 3 Bible Commentaries. Hopefully you've enjoyed what I've already accomplished so far. I've already done teaching videos on the book of Joel from this book, as well as teaching videos from the book of Zephaniah. You can pick those up on YouTube, and please hit like if you like them. And ask questions. I'm here to answer your questions. I am a teacher. I'm now doing the book of Zechariah. I've already accomplished through the first 6 chapters of Zechariah. Today is going to be Zechariah chapter 7, and hopefully you're learning from these videos. They're very informative of the proper interpretations of what is written in these 3 prophetic books. They're very closely knit together about the day of the Lord, and have some very informative information. You can bring them 3 together to read them, and you start understanding a little bit better about the last days and the day of the Lord. I'm going to forward this PDF file of the book down to chapter 7, so breaking it down the way to Zechariah 7. And it should be real quick here, and there it is, Zechariah 7. So if you like my video, please hit like, subscribe to the channel. I'm here, my sole purpose is to teach what the Lord has showed me, so hopefully you're learning from this. I'm going to start reading verse 1 of chapter 7. And it came to pass in the 4th year of King Darius that the word of the Lord came unto Zechariah in the 4th day of the 9th month, even Chislev. Now, until this chapter, Zechariah had been writing in the 2nd year, which in the 8th month and the 11th month of the 2nd year of King Darius II of Persia. Don't confuse with him saying Darius here being Darius the First. It is Darius II who reigned from 423 to 404 BC, according to secular history. Now, here in the 9th month of the 4th year, nearly 2 years had passed until his next prophecy. His last prophecy was in the 2nd year of King Darius II. The month is called in English Chislev, when it's actually in the Hebrew Kislev, which is the ecclesiastical year of the Hebrew calendar, the 9th month, as well as the 3rd month of the civil calendar. So there's the month of Kislev is the ecclesiastical year of the 9th month. The 9th month of the ecclesiastical year. Now, it's also known as the 3rd month of the civil calendar. So people get confused about what month it is and what have you. There are 2 different calendars with the same months, and they call one the ecclesiastical year and the other one the civil year, and so you have to know which calendar they're talking about in order to what month it is. The time of year in our secular Gregorian calendar is November, December, like the last week of November, the first 3 weeks of December. In general, it is hard to pinpoint the exact day, since the Jewish calendar was using a 360-day year, which was not lined up with the world's 365-day year calendar. It was not until the Julian calendar reform of 45 BC when the world adopted the 365-day calendar. For now, we can call it the 4th day of that month, or the 2nd of December, 419 BC. Okay, just in general. So, the building of the temple had begun in the 2nd year of King Darius II, as per Ezra 4:24. Then ceased the work of the house of God, which is at Jerusalem. So it ceased even until the 2nd year of the reign of King Darius, king of Persia, the 2nd year. Now, what did I say up here? I said Darius started reigning in 423 BC. So if this is the 4th year, it's obviously 419 BC, right? So with this, the building of the temple had begun the 2nd year of King Darius, as per Ezra 4:24, which was 421 BC, when the temple began re-established building again. It had ceased until the second year, right? So they started building, it ceased for, it was like about 77 years, 70 years, something like that. And then within this verse, we can understand that Zechariah is speaking on behalf of the Lord after they had been under construction of the temple for approximately 2 years, because this is 419 BC. They had started building the temple in 421 BC. Okay, just so you're on the same page here. Now, Zechariah 7:2, when they had sent into the house of God Sherezer and Regem-melech and their men to pray before the Lord. So the people had sent a delegation into the sanctuary to pray. They have a motive, though, don't they? Why do you send a delegation? Because they're supposed to be representing you, right? But in reality, the intent was to inquire of the priests and prophets about fasting. Sherezer, and Regem-melech were their elected spokesmen to speak in behalf of the people, basically. 7:3, and to speak unto the priests which were in the house of the Lord of hosts, and to the prophets, saying, should I weep in the 5th month, separating myself, as I have done these so many years? Now, this verse provides the ultimate motive for the sending their delegation. It is obvious that the praying mentioned in verse 2 was just for them to look upright in the sight of the priests and prophets, right? So the weeping that was being inquired about were in the days spent weeping bitterly and fasting concerning the 5th month of Av. The Jews had made the 9th day of Av an annual day of weeping and fasting after this captivity and destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. There is only one day in the laws of Moses which will require up to the fast, and that would be Tishri 10. This was the Feast of Atonement, or Yom Kippur. You can find that fasting here in Leviticus 16:29 through 34. The people's confusion was, since they were back from captivity, should they still weep and fast over the 9th of Av? And that was called Tisha B'Av. They had spent every year since that time weeping and fasting concerning the disaster, talking about the Babylonian captivity and destruction of Jerusalem and the temple. They've been fasting ever since that. This was done in hope that the Lord would hear them and bring them back to rebuild Jerusalem and the temple. That's why they would be fasting and weeping. Therefore, their question was asked, should they continue to weep and fast since they had been brought back and were building the temple? Do we continue to fast and pray? So, and then then came the word of the Lord of hosts unto me, saying, now this is Zechariah. The Lord chose Zechariah to be his mouthpiece in order to respond to the delegation's question. Remember, they came to the temple of the Lord to speak to the priests and the prophets. The Lord picked Zechariah as the prophet to speak through. Now, Zechariah then, what's he saying? He says in verse 5, speak unto all the people of the land and to the priests, saying, when you fasted and mourned in the 5th and 7th month, even those 70 years of captivity, did you at all fast unto me, even unto me? He double emphasizes this. Zechariah was to speak out to all of those who returned back from captivity, including the priests. The Lord asked a convicting question to all of them. When they did actually fast, were they fasting to the Lord, or was it because they were being coerced into it by the congregation? And then they were being, come on, we gotta fast. Oh my, we have to fast again. Okay, I'll do it. All right, can you just hear them? The Lord had asked concerning their fasting on the 9th of Av, 5th month, but also the 7th month. They had also initiated an additional day of fasting in the 7th month, Tishri. And in addition to the Tishri 10 Feast of Atonement that we had mentioned earlier, they also implemented the 3rd day of Tishri as well. This was to mourn over the assassination of Gedaliah and the massacre of 80 men, as per Jeremiah 4:1 through 10. It actually happened on Tishri 1 and 2, the Feast of Trumpets, but they chose to wait to fast after the festivities of the feast day. The Lord knew the hearts of the people who fasted out of vain repetition and not with a contrite heart unto him. Right? That's why he said this. All right. Verse 6. And when did you eat? When did you drink? Did you not eat for yourselves and drink for yourselves? And when you did eat, okay. And when you did eat, and when you did drink, did you not eat for yourselves and drink for yourselves? Now the Lord convicted the people of their guilt. He accused them of spending their other days eating and drinking for themselves, and not praying in thanks to Him who blessed them with their food and drink. The evil that the rest of humanity does. You've seen them. You've ate with them. They just dig in. They were guilty of as well. Dig in. God's people should honor their Lord and thank Him for providing them with blessings which He has poured out upon them. Okay, so we're back. We're going to go to verse 7 now. Should you not hear the words which the Lord had cried by the former prophets, when Jerusalem was inhabited in prosperity, and the cities thereof round about her, when men inhabited the south and the plain? The Lord spoke through Zechariah and asked the returned remnant from the captivity if they had heard what the pre-exilic prophets had cried into Jerusalem and the surrounding cities of Judah. The whole reason that the Lord had destroyed the cities and the people was because they had forgotten Him. They did not honor Him as the one who provided for them. Right? So, Zechariah 7:8. You can see the Lord is making a point here. Right? And the word of the Lord came into Zechariah, saying, after providing the people with convicting words, the Lord brought yet more to Zechariah to declare unto them. Thus speaks the Lord of hosts, saying, execute true judgment, show mercy and compassion, every man to his brother. Okay, he's making a point. In verse 7, the Lord reminded the remnant what He had told them from the former prophets, such as Isaiah. I'm going to stop here briefly. I wrote a commentary on the book of Isaiah from December 2017, finished it right before my cancer surgery in July of 2019. It was published this year in January. A great book to use as a textbook for college, as well as a Bible study. It informs you of what the interpreted verses mean of Isaiah. Chapter 58 is very informative of what the Lord expects in fasting. All right. The Lord had provided Isaiah with fasting instructions for the returned remnant in Isaiah 58. It hits home with what the Lord was convicting the returned remnant of when they were not fasting unto Him. Isaiah 58:6 says, is not this the fast that I have chosen, to loose the bands of wickedness, to undo the heavy burdens, and to let the oppressed go free, and you break every yoke? Okay, this is the whole reason for fasting. Not doing it so that God gives you what you want, so He blesses you. It's not for that. Oh, let's pray and fast for that so it can come true. No. Fasting is to loose the evil around you, to break the evil yoke you have upon you, so that you treat people correctly, so that you let the oppressed go free, so that you undo the heavy burdens you put on others. All right? Loose the bands of your wickedness, not someone else's, of your wickedness. That's the reason for fasting. All right? Fasting and praying. Praying is just as important as the fasting, if not more. The people should have known already what an acceptable fast was. So the Lord asked the church, is not this the fast that I've chosen? The true motives of the fast is always to loosen the bands of wickedness within one's life, which is to break the evils which the person inflicts onto others. The heart of mankind is cruel and selfish, which causes heavy burdens to be put on others and oppressions inflicted upon others. The fasting breaks a person's band of wickedness, which has been inflicting yokes upon others, right? And that's what Isaiah means, all right? And in Isaiah 58, he explains it very detailed. I'm going to read verse 10. And oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor, and let none of you imagine evil against his brother in your heart. You see, he's going right along with Isaiah. here and recognizing the Lord is telling him, hey, I gave you instructions per Isaiah 58. Why aren't you following them? He didn't follow it the whole 70 years. It's not like he had it written for them. Isaiah gave it to them. Here's Isaiah 58:7. Is it not to deal your bread to the hungry, and that you bring the poor that are cast out to do your house? When you see the naked, that you cover him, and that you hide not yourself from your own flesh? Sounds like Jesus, doesn't it? Sounds like something Jesus would say, because it is Jesus. Jesus is the Word of God. Jesus is the one who brought Isaiah to write this. God continued to question those not fasting in his required manner, to recall what is important to him. God is a God of mercy. He requires all his people to be as merciful as he is. Feeding those who are hungry means feeding people who live outside of the household, who are less fortunate to have food, right? It's not, oh, hey, come sit down, I'm supposed to feed you. No, it's for the hungry outside of your home. If there is someone who has lost their home, bring them into your home to stay. That's what Isaiah is saying. Provide clothing to those who have no clothes, as merciful as the Lord requires. Doesn't this sound like Jesus? And I think it was Matthew 25. Matthew 25. The mercies are not to be for those of the immediate family, but to all of mankind. Mankind is of the same flesh, who are all sons and daughters of Noah. When fasting, let yourself walk about the city. Open your eyes to those who need mercy from you. Not to point out, hey, you guys need to help them. You help them. All right, verse 11. But they refused to hearken, and pulled away the shoulder, stopped their ears, that they should not hear. The Lord prophesied through Zechariah concerning the returned remnant's descendants. Though this verse can also apply to the destruction of those during the Babylonian Syrian invasions, the instructions in those previous verses were to the returned remnant, Zechariah 7:9, and not to those who had already been destroyed. The Lord started with a but to reveal that the returned remnant's descendants refused to hearken to the Lord's instructions and pull away their shoulders and ears. Their descendants were going to ignore the Lord and not hear his words. This is okay, and stop their ears and they should not hear. Yeah, you can say that's the past for before the Babylonian captivity. You could say that. Yeah, you could. But wait, keep following me here. This is Zechariah prophesying in the future perfect progressive tense, as if it had already happened. All right. Why do I say that? Well, we'll keep reading. Yea, they made their hearts as an adamant stone, lest they should hear the law and the words which the Lord has sent in his spirit by his former prophets. Notice former prophets. Therefore came a great wrath from the Lord of hosts. Right? Zechariah was prophesying in the future progressive tense, where it was so sure to happen that it was spoken as if it already had. The translators use the word adamant or flintstone. The Flintstones. A flint stone is usually very hard, so that it will cause a spark to occur when something strikes it. The hard-hearted descendants of the returned remnant would not hear the law nor the words from the Lord when he would come and speak of the kingdom to come of the kingdom to come to them. The kingdom to them. I'm sorry, Jesus spoke the kingdom to them. This is why he destroyed them. Therefore came a great wrath from the Lord of hosts. The reality was that the Lord was letting this returned remnant know that their descendants were going to fall into the same apathetic hard-heartedness that their fathers had been destroyed over. Therefore, it is come to pass that as he cried, and they would not hear, so they cried, and I would not hear, saith the Lord of hosts. Zechariah was prophesying in the future perfect progressive tense again, which is so sure to happen that the Lord speaks as if it already has. The word therefore is there for a reason, because the returned remnant's descendants will have hardened hearts towards Messiah, Jesus, who is he in this verse. The Lord will not hear them. The reference to he refers to Messiah Jesus, who will speak the warnings from his father to Judah and Jerusalem before their destruction. The reference to they are each of those receiving the warnings from the Lord. Those receiving wrath, they will cry. The Lord will turn away a shoulder and ear to them, just as they will to him. All right, Matthew 23:13 through 14. But woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you shut up the kingdom of heaven against men. For you neither go in yourselves, neither suffer you them that are entering to go in. Woe unto you, scribes and Pharisees, hypocrites, for you devour widows' houses, and for pretense make longer prayer. Therefore you shall receive the greater damnation. So they were taking advantage of the widows, right? The Pharisees and scribes. Verse 14, but I scattered them with a whirlwind among all nations whom they knew not. Thus the land was desolate after them, that no man passed through nor returned, for they laid the pleasant land desolate. As a result of their not listening to the Lord, he carried out what he had warned. Though Israel and Judah had been scattered among the nations, they would be again scattered in AD 70 throughout the entire planet of nations. Right? If one were to read in Jeremiah, the land left behind was not desolate after the Babylon captivity, right? He says he's going to leave it desolate. So you guys are saying, well, how can you even think that this is in the future? He's talking like it's in the past. So he's talking about the Babylonian captivity. Oh, is he? Okay. Laid the pleasant land desolate. What does desolate mean? All right. The poor were left behind and to be vine dressers and to work the land without those taken captive. Right? And Jeremiah 52:16 says, but Nebuzaradan, the captain of the guard, left certain of the poor of the land for vine dressers and for husbandmen. So if they're vine dressers and husbandmen and people are left behind, is the land desolate? Can you say that it's desolate? No, you can't. It wasn't desolate. Nowhere will you find in Lamentations or any of the words spoken by Jeremiah, never will you find anywhere in the scriptures that the land after Babylon captivity was left desolate. It wasn't. It wasn't left desolate. You have to take the word of the Lord for what he says. He didn't just exaggerate here. It was not left desolate during the Babylonian captivity. That's where I get my position on this prophecy, is basically with this verse. It shows that he's prophesying of the future. He did not leave it desolate. This prophecy of Zechariah 7:11 through 14 cannot be the curse put upon the returned remnant's fathers, but for the returned remnant's descendants, if they failed to treat the people with mercy. Zechariah 7:10 says, and oppress not the widow, nor the fatherless, the stranger, nor the poor, and let none of you imagine evil against the brother in your heart. Remember, we read that previously. The land of Israel was left a desolation for 2 millenniums after the Roman destruction of Jerusalem in AD 70. It was desolate after them. Desolate after them. Thus the land was desolate after them. See what I'm saying? It wasn't desolate after the Babylonian captivity. It was so badly desolate that it was not even worth the time for anyone to live off of it, right? It was no longer a pleasant place to stay. Ezekiel 33:28 says, for I will lay the land most desolate, and the pomp of her strength shall cease, and the mountains of Israel shall be desolate, that none shall pass through. So this Ezekiel 33 prophecy is not of the land after the captivity either. Remember, as you get into 36 and 37, is the returning of the remnant after the Roman captivity and destruction, the 2,000 year later return, right? So a few chapters later. So you got to figure. I haven't done a commentary on Ezekiel, but I know that I've studied Ezekiel, and I know that is not a verse pertaining to the desolation from the Babylon captivity. It's not. Ezekiel prophesied before the captivity even happened, but he did not prophesy of the land being desolate after the Babylonian captivity. He did not. All right, I'm going to read something who said, oh, okay. This is something that shows how desolate the land was after the Roman destruction and the 2,000 years of desolation, that the land is left desolate after them. This is written by Samuel Clemens, Mark Twain. He went into the Holy Land and he wrote what he saw. He wrote what he had seen. He said, "A desolate country whose soil is rich enough but is given over wholly to weeds, a silent mournful expanse, a desolation. We never saw a human being on the whole route, hardly a tree or shrub anywhere. Even the olive tree and the cactus, those fast friends of the worthless soil, had almost deserted the country." So, are you convinced yet that this prophecy is not of the Babylonian captivity of the past, but he speaks in the future, in the past? How did I mean, I say it all the time, but I can never remember. I feel foolish. I'm sorry. The perfect progressive tense. I said somewhere. It was verse 7. Not seeing it. I'll keep moving. It doesn't really matter in my point. I think you get the point. Hopefully you do. Alright, so after what Samuel Clemens said, where was I? There it is. I'm in verse 14. "But I scattered them with a whirlwind among all nations whom they knew not. Thus the land was desolate after them." That no. Oh, I already wrote on that. Did I already write on that? I did. I'm being foolish, and I'm sorry. Oh. That's the last verse anyway. Okay, so verse 14 is the last verse of the chapter. And so the whole idea of the chapter was the people in the fourth year, after 2 years of construction of the temple, came into the temple to ask the priests and prophets if they should still fast and pray that they were doing for 70 years. The Lord convicted them of their hardened hearts and how they didn't pray to Him. It was out of coercion that they prayed and fasted, and that they eat, drank, and be merry during the 70 years and never thanked Him for a single meal. Some did, probably, obviously. Daniel did and what have you, but for the most part they didn't. And he prophesied, Zechariah prophesied, of their descendants and what will happen to them after they fall into the same crimes of their fathers did of the Babylonian captivity. He's going to destroy Jerusalem and make it desolate, as he did, well, first time actually, because he did not make it desolate after the Babylonian captivity. He did not. There's nowhere that you can find it. But as what Samuel Clemens had confirmed, right, the place was absolute desolate, right? So this is the future of Jerusalem and the temple. After they get the temple built, Messiah comes, they reject Messiah, they go into captivity and destruction again. And this is a prophecy of that destruction, because they did not have the right heart for Him. They did not fast and pray to Him, and they did not treat, if they didn't fast and pray and do it right, they weren't loosening the bands of evil around them, and they were treating people wickedly. And Jesus convicted them. Matthew 23 is an example of the way He gave them a tongue lashing on the way they were. And then the last words in Matthew 23, he provided them a curse that they would not see him again until they said, "This blessed is he who comes in the name of the Lord," and so they won't see him again until they do actually say that. So this chapter is a prophecy of the future for. I mean, it's already happened, but it's a prophecy of the future for the returned remnant. It's not recalling what had happened in the past about the desolation, or because there was no desolation. He did not leave the land desolate. That's the point. My point. This was the future. Okay, so until next time, we're going to do chapter 8 next time. That's a great chapter as well. I look forward to it. Zechariah is so meaty, so full of theology. Thank you so much for joining me today. May God bless you.